Stop right there. You're telling me these entitled sisters thought they could turn my farm into their personal racetrack and get away with it? That's exactly what happened. And let me tell you, it's a story that'll make your blood boil and your jaw drop. My name's Jake, a third-generation farmer in the sleepy little town of Willow Creek, where the air smells of fresh hay and the sunrise paints my 50-acre spread of corn, soybeans, and apple orchards in shades of gold. This land isn't just my livelihood, it's my legacy, passed down from my grandpa to my dad to me. Every morning I'm out there before dawn, feeding the chickens, checking the crops, and making sure my herd of dairy cows is happy. It's hard work, but it's my life, and I love every second of it. That is until the Karen sisters, Lisa and Tara, rolled into town and decided my farm was their personal shortcut. Asterisk, it all started about 6 months ago. On a crisp spring morning, I was out in the north field inspecting my young corn plants when I noticed something off. Deep, ugly tire tracks cutting right through my rows like a scar. Corn stalks were flattened, their delicate green tips crushed into the dirt. At first, I figured it was a one-time thing, maybe some lost tourist or a kid joyriding in their dad's truck. I grumbled, made a mental note to keep an eye out, and went about my day. But a week later, it happened again. More tracks, more ruined crops. By the third time, I was livid. I spent hours replanting, only to wake up the next Saturday to the same mess. That's when I decided to play detective. Asterisk, I borrowed a trail camera from my buddy Mike, who uses them for hunting, and set it up on an old oak tree overlooking the north field. The next weekend, I got my answer. Around 10 a.m., I heard the unmistakable roar of an engine and the blare of pop music echoing across my fields. I grabbed my binoculars and ran to the porch. There they were, Lisa and Tara, two sisters from the fancy new subdivision on the edge of town, tearing through my farm in a shiny red convertible, like they were starring in some Hollywood movie. Lisa, the older one with a bleach blonde bob and a permanent scowl, was behind the wheel, laughing as she swerved through my corn. Tara, her younger sister, was in the passenger seat, sunglasses perched on her head, snapping selfies like my farm was her personal Instagram backdrop. Asterisk, I sprinted to the field, waving my arms like a madman to get their attention. The car screeched to a halt, and Lisa leaned out, glaring at me like I was the one trespassing. "What's your problem, farmer boy?" she snapped, her voice dripping with disdain. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool, and explained that this was private property. My property and their little joyrides were destroying my crops. Tara giggled, twirling her hair, and said, "Oh, come on, it's just dirt. You'll grow more." Lisa smirked and added, "We're just taking a shortcut to the vineyard. Chill out." Before I could respond, they peeled out, spraying mud in my face and flattening another row of corn. Asterisk, I stood there, fists clenched, watching their car disappear down the dirt path that cut through my land. The vineyard they were headed to was a trendy spot about 5 miles away, a place where city folks paid $20 for a glass of wine and pretended they knew the difference between Merlot and Cabernet. Apparently the sisters had decided my farm was a quicker route than the perfectly good county road that looped around it. I'm a patient guy, but this was war. Those Karens had no idea who they were messing with. After that first encounter, I was determined to stop the Karen sisters without losing my temper or my farm's peace. I'm not one for confrontation, but I couldn't let them keep destroying my livelihood.
Oh.
My north field was already showing signs of stress, trampled corn stalks, compacted soil, and uneven growth where their tires had churned the earth. Each ruined row was money out of my pocket, hours of labor wasted, and a personal insult to the land my family had worked for decades. I decided to start with a civil approach, hoping they'd respect clear boundaries. Asterisk, the next day I drove to the local hardware store, a small family-owned place where the cashier, Old Man Jenkins, knows every farmer in Willow Creek by name. I bought a dozen bright orange private property, no trespassing signs, the kind you can't miss even in a fog. I spent a sweaty afternoon hammering them into the ground along the dirt path the sisters used as their shortcut. I even added reflective tape to make them glow under headlights, thinking, surely they'll see these and turn around. For good measure, I spray-painted "Keep Out" in bold red letters on a few wooden stakes. It looked like a fortress entrance. By the time I was done, that weekend, I waited, hoping my signs would do the trick. Saturday morning came, and I was out tending to my cows when I heard the familiar roar of their convertible. My heart sank as I grabbed my binoculars. Sure enough, Lisa and Tara were back, speeding through the north field like my signs were invisible. When I hiked over to check, I found half the signs ripped from the ground. Some snapped in two, others tossed into a ditch like trash. The tire tracks were deeper than ever, carving a jagged scar through my corn. I stood there, staring at the wreckage, my hands shaking with frustration. These sisters weren't just ignoring me, they were mocking me. I called my farmhands, Miguel and Sarah, for a brainstorming session. Miguel, a burly guy who's been with me through drought and blight, was ready to march to the sisters' fancy subdivision and have it out. Let's block their driveway with hay bales, he half-joked, his eyes flashing with anger. Sarah, always the level-headed one, leaned back in her chair and said, Jake, these aren't regular folks. They're Karens. They don't care about signs or reason. They only care about themselves and that shiny red car. She was right. I'd seen Lisa polishing the convertibles who'd like it was a priceless artifact, and Tara wouldn't stop, posting photos of it on her influencer Instagram, captioned with hashtags like #luxurylife and #redhotride. I decided to escalate. The next weekend, Miguel, Sarah, and I built a barrier across the path. We hauled old wooden pallets, logs, and even a rusted metal gate from the barn, stacking them into a formidable blockade. It wasn't pretty, but it was solid ore, so I thought. We reinforced it with heavy rocks and tied it together with baling twine, figuring no one could drive through without a tractor. I even added a new sign, Final warning, nitrogen monoxide. We stood back, sweaty and satisfied, convinced we'd finally stop them. Sunday morning. I woke to the sound of splintering wood. I ran to the north field, my stomach twisting. The barrier was demolished, pallets shattered, logs scattered, and the metal gate bent like a paperclip. Tire tracks cut through the debris, and tucked under a broken pallet was a note in loopy, smug handwriting. Stay out of our way, farmer. I could practically hear Lisa's nasally voice through the paper. My blood boiled. They hadn't just ignored my efforts, they'd taken pleasure in destroying them. Miguel cursed under his breath, and Sarah just shook her head, muttering, these Karens are next level. I knew I had to take it up a notch, but I also wanted to stay on the right side of the law. I called Sheriff Daniels, a good guy but notorious for dodging drama. I showed him photos of the damage, the destroyed signs, and the trail cam footage of the sisters' joyrides. He sighed, rubbing his neck, and promised to have a word with them. A week later, he called back, saying Lisa and Tara claimed they didn't know it was private property, a bald-faced lie. Given the signs, the barrier, and my face-to-face warning, the sheriff admitted his hands were tied. Lisa's husband was a hotshot lawyer with buddies in the county office, and Tara's social media clout made them local celebrities of sorts. They're slippery, Jake, Daniel said. You might need to handle this yourself? That was the last straw. Wasn't just fighting for my crops anymore. This was about respect, about standing up to two entitled sisters who thought they could bulldoze anyone in their way. I started thinking about Sarah's words. They only care about that car. If signs and barriers wouldn't stop them, maybe their precious convertible could be their undoing. I didn't want to break the law or stoop to their level, but I needed a plan that would hit them where it hurt. As I sat on my porch that night, watching the stars over my battered north field, an idea began to form, one that involved a muddy trap, a little ingenuity, and a whole lot of karma. By now, I was done playing nice. The Karen sisters had turned my peaceful farm into their personal speedway, week after week, with no regard for the damage they caused. My north field was a mess, corn stalks flattened, soil compacted, and my cows so spooked their milk production was dipping. Each ruined row was a hit to my wallet and a slap to my family's legacy. I wasn't just fighting for crops anymore. This was about respect. Lisa and Tara thought they could bulldoze my land and my dignity, but they were about to learn that farmers don't back down. I called a late-night strategy session with Miguel and Sarah, my trusted farmhands, on my creaky old porch. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the distant hum of crickets. Over a cooler of cold beers, we hashed out a plan that was equal parts clever and satisfying, one that would hit the sisters, or hurt without breaking the law or stooping to their level. Sarah, who's got a sharp mind for strategy, leaned forward, her eyes glinting with mischief. "Jake, these Karens don't care about your signs or the sheriff, but that shiny red convertible, it's their baby. Mess with that, and they'll feel it." Miguel, nursing his beer, nodded. "Yeah, man. I've seen them polishing that car like it's a trophy. Let's make it their trap." That's when it hit me. The Northfield had a low patch, a natural dip that turned into a muddy quagmire after heavy rain. A big storm was forecast for Friday night, perfect for turning that spot into a soupy mess. But we weren't going to leave it to chance. We needed to ensure their car would get stuck badly, and we needed proof they were trespassing to finally get the sheriff to act. The plan came together like a well-plowed row. First, we'd enhance the muddy patch. The low spot was already prone to pooling water, but we'd make it a car-swallowing trap. Under the cover of dusk, we grabbed our shovels and headed to the Northfield. The ground was soft from recent rains, perfect for digging. We carved a shallow trench across the sisters' usual path, about 2 feet wide and a foot deep, just enough to trap a low-riding convertible, but subtle enough to look natural. We packed the trench with loose dirt, blending it into the surrounding soil, and scattered broken corn stalks and debris over it for camouflage. To anyone driving through, it looked like just another bumpy stretch of field until their tires hit it. Next, we upped the ante. My farm has a small irrigation channel that feeds water from a nearby creek to my crops. With a few hours of digging, we rerouted a branch of it to flow directly into the trench, ensuring the area would stay soggy and slick even after the storm passed. The result was a deceptively solid-looking path that was actually a tire-sucking swamp, ready to swallow their precious car. Miguel tested it by tossing a heavy log into the trench. It sank with a satisfying squelch. "Well, they're gonna hate this," he said, grinning ear to ear. But we weren't done. "Let's make this airtight." We needed evidence. The trail cam that caught the sisters' earlier joyrides was good, but its angle wasn't perfect for the trap. So we climbed the old oak tree and repositioned it, securing it with bungee cords to capture a clear view of the trench. We tested the footage on my laptop, zooming in to make sure it'd catch every detail: license plate, faces, and all. If Lisa and Tara got stuck, we'd have undeniable proof of their trespassing, enough to force Sheriff Daniel's hand. No matter how connected they were, we also planned our approach for when the trap worked. No yelling, no gloating, just calm, firm professionalism. I'd point out the trail cam, remind them they were on private property, and offer to call a tow truck for a price. If they tried to argue, the footage would do the talking. Sarah suggested we keep a few old buckets nearby to help them scoop mud, mostly to rub it in without crossing into harassment. "Let them stew in their own mess," she said, chuckling. As we finalized the plan, the mood on the porch shifted from frustration to anticipation. This wasn't just about protecting my farm, it was about justice. Lisa and Tara had mocked my signs, smashed my barrier, and laughed in my face. Now, their arrogance was about to drive them straight into a muddy nightmare. We clinked our beers, sealing the pact. "Yay, yay." "To karma," Miguel toasted. "To teaching Karens a lesson," Sarah added. I nodded, picturing their shocked faces when their car sank. The storm was coming, and so was their reckoning. Friday night's storm was a beast. A howling monster that dumped buckets of rain across Willow Creek, turning the Northfield into a muddy quagmire. By Saturday morning, the air was heavy with the scent of wet earth, and our carefully laid trap was ready, a deceptively solid-looking path hiding a tire-sucking swamp. I woke early, my stomach buzzing with anticipation, and checked the trail cam's battery one last time. Miguel and Sarah were already at the farmhouse, sipping coffee and exchanging knowing glances. We didn't say much. We all knew what was coming. Asterisk around 10 a.m., right on schedule. I heard the familiar roar of an engine and the blare of pop music echoing across the fields. From my porch, I grabbed my binoculars and watched as the sisters' shiny red convertible crested the hill. kicking up dust as it sped toward the north field. Lisa was behind the wheel, her bleach blonde hair whipping in the wind, a smug grin plastered on her face. Tara, in the passenger seat, was holding her phone aloft, snapping selfies with that same clueless confidence. Probably already planning her next #luxury life post. They were oblivious to the trap waiting just ahead. I couldn't help but smile. The convertible hit the trench at full speed, and the sound was glorious, a deep, wet squelch that reverberated like a thunderclap. The car lurched forward, then stopped dead, its front tires sinking into the muddy trench we'd crafted with such care. The engine whined as Lisa floored the gas, but the tires just spun, spraying mud in every direction. The sisters' screams pierced the morning air, louder than their music. A mix of shock and outrage that echoed across the farm. Tara's phone slipped from her hand, landing in a puddle, and Lisa's face turned a shade of red that rivaled her car's paint job. I took my time walking over, Miguel and Sarah trailing behind, both struggling to keep straight faces. As we approached, the scene was even better than I'd imagined. The convertible was tilted forward, its front end buried in the muck, the rear tires barely touching solid ground. Mud coated the hood, splattered the windshield, and oozed into the pristine leather interior. Lisa was out of the car, her designer, boots sinking ankle-deep into the sludge, shrieking like a banshee. "You did this on purpose, you redneck," she yelled, pointing a manicured finger at me. Tara, still in the passenger seat, was clutching the dashboard, wailing, "My car, my beautiful car, the paint's ruined." Her sunglasses were askew, and her influencer composure was long gone. I stopped a safe distance away, crossing my arms and keeping my voice calm but firm. "Ladies, you're trespassing on private property. Again, I warned you to stay off my land, but you didn't listen." I pointed to the trail cam, its lens glinting in the sunlight from the oak tree. "And before you start, it's all on. Video every second of you driving through my field, destroying my crops, and getting stuck in your own mess." Lisa's mouth opened and closed, her face twisting into a scowl as she realized she had no comeback. Tara, still in the car, tried to salvage her phone from the puddle, only to smear mud across her white designer top, which sent her into another round of hysterics. Miguel couldn't hold it in anymore, and let out a snort of laughter, quickly covering it with a cough. Sarah, ever the diplomat, offered a fake sympathetic smile and said, "Looks like you're in a bit of a pickle? Need a tow truck?" Lisa spun on her, slipping in the mud and nearly falling. "This is sabotage," she screamed. "I'm calling my lawyer." I shrugged, unfazed. "Go ahead. But the sheriff's gonna see that footage, and I've got a stack of photos showing the damage you've done to my crops. You're not wiggling out of this one." Keeping my tone polite, but making it clear they'd be footing the bill. "Might take a couple hours," I said, loud enough for them to hear. "This is a tough spot to reach, and that mud's no joke." Lisa's eyes widened and she started pacing, her boots making obscene squishing noises. Tara, finally climbing out of the car, slipped and landed on her knees in the mud, letting out a wail that could have woken the cows in the next county. "This is your fault," she sobbed, pointing at me like a toddler throwing a tantrum. I just shook my head and said, "No, ma'am. This is what happens when you drive where you don't belong." We stood there, watching them stew in their muddy misery, the trail cam capturing every glorious moment. The sisters tried to push the car, but it only sank deeper, the mud claiming it like quicksand. Miguel whispered to me, "This is better than TV." Sarah handed them an old bucket to help scoop the mud, her voice dripping with mock kindness. Lisa swatted it away, but Tara, desperate, started scooping, only to fling mud onto her own face. It took everything I had not to laugh out loud. The moment Lisa and Tara's red convertible sank into the muddy trench, I knew we'd won. But the real victory came in the hours and days that followed, as the sisters faced the consequences of their arrogance in a way that left Willow Creek buzzing with talk of small-town justice. The sisters' screams faded into a mix of frantic muttering and desperate attempts to free their car. But the mud held firm, clinging to their prized convertible like a jealous lover. The once gleaming vehicle was now a pathetic sight, its hood, coated in thick brown sludge, its chrome rims caked with dirt, and its leather interior splattered with muddy water that had seeped through the open roof. Lisa, her designer boots, ruined, stood knee-deep in the muck, her face a mask of fury and humiliation. Tara, still clutching her waterlogged phone, sobbed hysterically, mourning the car's custom paint job like it was a fallen friend. Asterisk, I stood there with Miguel and Sarah, keeping my composure despite the urge to cheer. "You're on private property," I repeated, pointing to the trail cam perched in the oak tree, its lens capturing every second of their predicament. "I warned you multiple times, and you kept coming back. Now you're stuck, and I've got it all on video." Lisa's eyes narrowed, and she opened her mouth to argue, but the squelch of her boots slipping in the mud cut her off. She stumbled, catching herself on the car's muddy hood, and let out a string of curses that would have made a sailor blush. Tara, meanwhile, tried to salvage her influencer cred by filming a shaky video, muttering about injustice and crazy farmers. But her mascara-restrict face and mud-soaked outfit weren't exactly #luxury life material. Asterisk, I pulled out my phone and called Pete's Towing, the only service in Willow Creek equipped to handle a mess like this. "Got a car stuck in the north field," I said, loud enough for the sisters to hear. "Might be a while, it's pretty deep in the mud." Pete, who'd heard rumors about the sisters' antics, chuckled and said he'd be there in a couple of hours. The sisters' faces fell at the wait time. "Ours," Lisa shrieked. "Wait. We have a wine tasting at the vineyard. You can't do this." I shrugged, calm as ever. "Should have thought of that before you drove through my crops. I'll send you the bill for the tow and the damage to my field." Asterisk, while we waited, the sisters' meltdown reached new heights. Lisa tried to push the car, only to slip and land on her backside in the mud, her white pants now a soggy brown mess. Tara, realizing her phone was dead, started begging us for a shovel or something to get us out. Sarah, with a grin she couldn't hide, handed her an old bucket. "Here, start scooping," she said, her tone dripping with mock kindness. Tara took it, desperate, but every scoop she flung seemed to land back on her or the car, adding to the chaos. Miguel whispered to me, "This is better than any movie." I nodded, watching the sisters flail, their entitlement crumbling with every squishy step. Asterisk, when Pete's tow truck finally rumbled into view. The sisters looked like they'd been through a war. Pete, a grizzled guy with a no-nonsense attitude, surveyed the scene and whistled. "Y'all really did a number on this one," he said, eyeing the convertible's sorry state. He hooked up the tow chains, but the mud was so thick it took nearly an hour to free the car, each pull accompanied by the sisters' groans and complaints. When Pete handed Lisa the bill, $800 for the tow, plus extra for the hazardous conditions, her jaw dropped. "This is outrageous," she yelled. Pete just shrugged. "Psh, mud like that ain't cheap to deal with. Pay up or walk." Asterisk, I'd already called Sheriff Daniels, who arrived as the tow truck was finishing up. I showed him the trail cam footage. On my phone, clear shots of the sisters' car tearing through my field, hitting the trench, and their subsequent meltdown. Daniels, who'd been reluctant to act before, couldn't ignore the evidence this time. "Lisa, Tara, you're getting a citation for trespassing," he said. Scribbling out a fine that would sting even their cushy bank accounts, Lisa tried to argue, mentioning her lawyer husband, but Daniels cut her off. "Save it for court. This video's airtight." Tara, still sniffling, muttered something about posting this injustice online. But her followers would soon see the footage to Willow Creek's rumor mill was faster than her WI-fee. Asterisk, with the sisters' car towed to a repair shop. I took stock of the damage to my field. The tire tracks and mud churn would cost me weeks of work to fix, not to mention the lost crops. I filed a claim with their insurance for the damages, attaching photos, the trail cam footage, and a detailed estimate of my losses. The claim was approved within days. Turns out even a hotshot lawyer can't argue with video evidence of deliberate trespassing. The payout covered my replanting costs, and then some. A small victory that felt like a big one. Asterisk, the sisters haven't driven through my farm since. Rumor has it they badmouthed me at the vineyard, calling me a petty farmer, but nobody in Willow Creek buys it. Trail cam footage made its way to the local bar, where it's played on a loop during Friday night happy hours, drawing cheers and laughter from folks who've had their own run-ins with entitled types. My North Field is recovering thanks to some extra care from me, Miguel, and Sarah, and my cows are back to their calm, milky selves. The farm feels like mine again, a place of peace and hard work, not a racetrack for rents. Asterisk the moral. Don't mess with a farmer's land, especially when he's got a muddy trap, a trail cam, and a point to prove. Lisa and Tara learned the hard way that their precious car wasn't above the lure of the mud. So, what do you think, folks? Ever dealt with entitled trespassers who thought they owned the world? Drop your stories in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. For more tales of small-town justice,